All right, in 13.7, we're going to be inverting square roots. So just stop and think for a moment. In the previous lesson, we went from quadratics, and we found the inverse of a quadratic. We ended with a square root. Today, we're doing the opposite. We're going to start with the square root, and we're going to invert it, and it's going to become a quadratic. So here, yesterday, you had restrictions, right, on the quadratic to produce the square root. So today, we're going to have to add the restrictions, and I'm going to show you how to do that, okay? So let's come back to this. So as we are inverting our quadratics, you are going to have to restrict it to only half. Remember, we can't use the full quadratic because it would not be a function any longer. So we have to restrict it to half, and like I said, I'll show you how to do that. So here's the basic instructions on it, and this is maybe cryptic, but you get it. How to restrict the quadratic? Well, remember the old quadratic function equation, this thing where we could pick out the vertex h and k? That h value is going to be your restricted value. And then you will know when you look at the equation if you want the less than or equal to or the greater than or equal to, and I'll demonstrate that for you. But first, let's just look at picking out h, just to remind ourselves how to pick out h from our equation. So look at these examples. Maybe you need to pause the video and write these down. But on the left side, look at the left side here. If I want to restrict the left side, that means it's going to be x is less than or equal to h. It's pointing left. That's what I need it to look like. So look at number 1. Think about the h and the k here. That plus 1 is only moving it up. It's not moving it left and right. So the h value is 0. So I would add in h is less than or equal to 0. On number 2, here's my h value, but remember I have to change the sign of it. So it's going to be x is less than or equal to -4. Number 3, again, h is right here, but I have to change the sign, and it's left, so it's going to point left, and it would be x is less than or equal to 8. Now, if we switch it to the right side, that means my inequality will be x is greater than or equal to whatever h is. So again, look at number 1. What is the h value here? Well, that -9 just means it's going down 9, not left and right. So x is greater than or equal to 0. That's my restriction. Number 2, notice the 9 is now in the parentheses, so it's my h value. But again, have to change the sign, so it'll be +9. Number 3, there's h. It's greater than or equal to, so since it's the right side, and change your sign of h. So it's x is greater than or equal to 5. That's how you find your restrictions. Now, let's practice the whole thing where we switch x and y and then we add the restriction at the end. So let's look at these. All right, so we're going to actually find the inverses. So let's start here. Finding the inverse, remember switch x and y, restrict our domain. Now, just as a reminder, if you notice, our equations already have the square root in them, so we do not add the square root to the equation. So we don't have, since we don't bring in the square root, there's no absolute value bars to worry about, no plus or minus to worry about. That doesn't matter in this case because the square root is already given. We're not putting it in there to solve. So let's jump into this. Okay, so I'm going to start by switching x and y. And then I'm going to move this 3 over, so it'll be x minus 3 equals the square root of y. I'm going to switch sides, just preference here. Now, I need to get rid of the square root, so I have to square both sides, right? So I'll have y, -1 is another way you can write your inverse notation, equals x minus 3 squared, and you can leave it just like this notation. Now we have to add in the restriction. Well, how do I know? Is it left or right? Here's how you're going to know. Look at the beginning of your equation. Notice how there's there's a plus sign there, right? We understand that to be a plus sign. That means it's going to be the right side. It's positive. So it's going to be the right side of the equation. So I'm going to say x is pointing right, greater than or equal to, and then what is the h value of this quadratic? Well, it's a 3, right? It's a 3. So there's my answer. That's what it's going to look like. Let's look at number 2. All right, switch x and y. Negative, notice the negative, y plus 8. So as always, we want to get rid of the negative first. So that makes it -x is equal to the square root of y plus 8. Now we're ready to get rid of the square root by squaring both sides. And that will give me, I'm going to switch the sides here like I did before. So y plus 8, I don't have to worry about the absolute value because it was already in the question. X squared here, negative x squared, will equal positive x squared. Now I keep solving. So y equals x squared minus 8. Now this is the inverse, so put y minus 1. And let's put in our restriction. Now let's decide what's happening here. Am I going left or right? Well, how do I know? Look at your beginning square root. It's negative, which means I'm pointing to the left. All right, pointing to the left. So let's go back and look at our vertex of our inverted question. What's the vertex of this equation? Well, it's 0. It's not 8. Remember, it's not in parentheses. So the vertex is still 0, 0 in this one. So it's x is less than or equal to 0. So this is the way your answer will look. All right, let's look at one more example. Y equals the square root of x minus 7. So start by flipping your x and your y. Again, I'm going to put what I'm solving for on the left. And I'm going to square both sides. When I do that, I get y minus 7 equals x squared. I need to move that 7 over. So I will have y negative 1, so it's the inverse, equals x squared plus 7. Now, I need to determine my restriction. So let's look back at the original. And since it's the positive square root, that indicates the right side. So it should point right. So let's think about what's the vertex of the line that I just found. Well, the vertex is 0, so it's greater than or equal to 0, right? So there's my answer. Hopefully this isn't too hard for you. You'll figure it out. Let me know what questions you have when you get to class. Thanks for watching.